I do. Everybody that's joining today, I know you, I've met you, and it's great to see you. I wanted to make sure if I hadn't met you, I introduced myself, but it's good to see you all, and I'm glad that you joined today. I'm not here today facilitating this presentation, this workshop alone. I am joined by Diana Root. Diana, I'm so glad when you can join us on one of these events because of your personal and professional experience.
Well, thanks for inviting me, and I'm very committed to the ALS Association, and whatever I can do to help make this maybe a little bit easier or informative for people, I'm happy to do that. So thanks.
No, we thank you, and y'all, that's one of the things that makes our ALS Texas community so strong, is that we are locked arms in the fight against ALS, and we know that. And y'all have heard me say this, the novel of ALS has so many chapters. And, you know, the more that we can be together and be stronger together throughout every chapter, it makes a difference. And that's what today's event, presentation and workshop is about. This is Family Talks. It's one of the presentations in our Family Talks series. We have a couple, some that are geared for kids. This one happens to be geared towards relationships, and specifically with your partner, your spouse, the loved one who's closest to you, that you're going to be having some really intimate and difficult but important conversations. Our hope today is for this to be interactive, although we understand because of the content, there may not be a lot that you are able or want to share today. These are really tips, insight, information in your toolbox so that you've got as much information as you can to make the absolute best decisions for you and your family. And if you are watching today, joining today, or when you watch the recording and living with ALS, so that your wishes are known, that your family knows and doesn't have to guess. And we'll talk more about that, but it's really about honoring wishes, respecting wishes, and communication. And that's what we want to give you tools for today. We know it's, again, these are tough conversations. And so if there's times that you need to turn your video off and just listen, feel free. This is a safe place for you to do whatever you need to do to absorb the information, but feel free to engage, to use the chat. We do want to hear from you, and we'll have some time at the end where if you have any questions, we can have some discussions. And a lot of what we'll talk about today will be sent, not only will you get this recording to go back and watch, but some of the things we talk about, maybe it's a form, or there'll be resources you'll get in a follow-up email, all right? So feel free to ask any questions that you've got. So when we talk about these essential conversations, it's really important that each of us, and there's a, you know, kind of one of those, the acronym up here, that each of us is living in the moment. Each of you are living in the moment, enjoying the laughter. And y'all, there is humor to be found in just about every situation, not every, but enjoying the laughter when you can, accepting what you can and need to at any given time, understanding the choices that you do have, and that's part of today too. What choices do you have? And help, enlisting help. The fact that you've registered and joined today, you are seeking that help to get the most information that you can, and it's so important. When we talk about these essential conversations, they are almost always very difficult. I kind of have this diagram up here because I don't know about y'all, but when I'm in difficult conversations or situations, I have a plan in my head, and it seems like it's going to go really, really straight shot to that finish line. But in reality, it's this bottom diagram here, you know, because people have responses and they don't always go the way that we think. There's feelings, there's moods, there's all those things. So the reality and understanding that it's not going to be a straight shot helps you have some realistic expectations that this truly is not going to be a one and done type conversation. It's going to be something that's revisited throughout the ALS journey. Diana, is there anything that you want to add to that on how these conversations need to happen more than once?
I was actually looking at the reality road, and the way you've got it scripted, it's really those curveballs that get thrown to us that we didn't expect. Some recent conversations with some people from some other support groups where they have gone into the hospital with one of their pals, and they went in thinking it was going to be one situation, and the situation really evolved once they were in the hospital, and it became much more complicated. And things that, they thought they were going to go in for maybe a simple procedure or something was going to go relatively easy, and one curveball after another, and they were faced with making decisions that they had not talked about before, didn't really know how to handle, don't know the questions to even begin to ask. So I think the whole point of this presentation, the essential conversations that you're having, please do them often. As the situation changes, your wishes might change, but like you said, this is not a one and done. You need to keep this going. This is a dynamic process. And you've just got to be ready for the curveballs and know who you can go to help you with navigating some of those decisions.
Thank you, Diana. That's so true. And knowing who you can go to, again, we're going to share some resources, but we have an amazing ALS Texas Care Services team. All of you are on here, and I see you from all over the state. You hopefully know who your care services contacts, your managers and coordinators in your area, whether you're in, Austin and El Paso, or San Antonio in the Rio Grande Valley, Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, and the greater Houston area. We've got, team members. Reach out to your care services team to continue these conversations too, and ask them some questions, get their insight, their expertise. That's what we're here for. So know that our team, besides just me and Diana, and Steve is actually on here today too, but you can reach out to anybody and continue these conversations. And again, and staying in line with the conversations are rarely that straight line. There's also important components to consider that in these conversations, some of the support that each of you need. When we say each of you, and that's going back to the each, but each of you meaning whether you are living with ALS or you are the spouse, partner, close family member, or friend of someone living with ALS, some of the support that each of you need is emotional, right? It's just acknowledging and naming and discussing the fears and feelings, and airing those is much better, even though it can be difficult, than keeping them inside and ignoring them. That's always going to bubble up into an ugly mess. It's just inevitable. And then, go ahead, Diana.
I'm sorry, I was going to say, and ALS is such a family disease. It is such a family process. I think there really needs to be collaboration between the family members. Of course, we want to ultimately give maybe the most weight to what the PALS wants, the person with the ALS, but the whole family needs to be involved in this, and they all need to have the ability to express their concerns, their fears, their hopes, because this is a team sport. And please take everybody's opinion into consideration, not just the person with ALS.
That's so true. And we'll kind of dig into this more too, but to Diana's point, involving the entire family, including young caregivers that are old enough to be in those conversations. They have feelings, they have fears that need to be discussed, and having these conversations can help hopefully prevent some family dynamic issues in some of these tough situations that have to happen or have to be discussed. Some of the support that you need is practical. So there's emotional and very practical. End of life care wishes need to be discussed, and funeral plans. We're going to dig into the three big parts of this presentation in a minute, but that's just one of those. And the main thing is avoid shutting down. We'll talk about stress and revisiting, but just don't shut down. It's important to come back to these conversations. It's always better to ask questions than to make assumptions, because assumptions set us up for suffering. There's a book called The 4 Agreements, and on the 3rd agreement, I've kind of got an excerpt from that about assumptions and finding the courage to ask questions and express what you really want. Communication, when we assume, it's more drama. We create problems oftentimes that aren't there. So we have to find ways to ease into conversations, to read and give cues that we're ready to have those conversations, so assumptions aren't being made. And when we think about having these discussions and navigating the decisions into the settings of serious illness, I want to give credit to a couple of different individuals who have shared some really great information, and this will be included in your resources as well. But Rebecca Axline at Houston Methodist, the social worker there, has done some great presentations related to hospice and choosing hospice, and really kind of detailing some information about that. And Dr. Foster did a presentation for ALS on a national level. And so again, those are great resources, and a couple of their information, or a couple of their slides, their topics we've included here because they're really important. So in navigating these decisions, it's really important that you gauge how much information you want. What am I ready for right now? Do I want, one wrench, or am I ready for the toolbox to have a full conversation? Identify what's important. This is what I want to talk about right now. And sometimes you may not know what's as important as it is, because Diana mentioned each day can bring a new change that you may very well have not been at all prepared for. Seeking out information from a trusted source. Again, not just our ALS Texas team, but there's a number of resources that will provide to you, and encourage you to continue to seek those on your own as well, so you've got as much information as possible, and then deciding on any next steps.
I wanted to go back a little bit to gauging how much information you want. Some people want to know everything. They want to know the nitty-gritty of the disease. They want to know what's going on. They've been doing their own research. Then there are some others, whether it's cancer, whether it's ALS, whatever disease they may be facing, sometimes they really don't want to know. They know ultimately the outcome is not going to be good, but they don't want, their stress level, or maybe just their personality, is one in that I don't need to have all that information. I get what's happening, but I want my spouse to get all of the information for me, or please feel free to talk with one of my kids about all of this. And as long as everybody is in agreement with that, I think that's okay, because that might be a survival or protective mechanism that somebody is engaging in on their own. You certainly don't want to cross the line and go into denial. That's not going to help anybody. But gauging how much information you want, I think that's reasonable to talk with your providers about, and say, yeah, I just want to know the basics, or what do I need to know for the initial getting my house set up, or the initial what medications or what treatments might be possible. And then some others is like, talk to my wife about it, talk to my husband about it. I'm not going to be making those decisions. So just kind of know your audience. How much information do you want? Also identify what's important. Some people want to stay home. They want to be home for the rest of their life. Some people, maybe that's not as important to them, but they want to make sure that they get to somebody's wedding, or they want to be alive for somebody's birth, or I want to get to a grandson's baseball game. So I think it's really important to have those conversations too, so that you know what's important to the person, so that you are kind of framing your decisions around that as well.
Thank you, Diana. Absolutely. And again, Diana speaks from personal and professional experience, and how important it is to have these conversations and have them often. Respect is always a part of communication, right? This is in every relationship and every day. When we're having really difficult conversations, it's especially important because we may or may not agree. And we often times, even on running on empty, for example, the workshop we do for caregivers, we talk about, as a caregiver, your primary role as a spouse, as a partner, is to advocate for what your loved one wants, not tell them what they should do. And so respecting those roles and respecting those wishes. And so it's really looking for opportunities to approach the topics. Again, these are not necessarily decisions and topics that come up every day, but there are things that may come up every day that kind of lead you to that. So for example, for those who are living with ALS, maybe there's a song or a sermon you heard, a book you read, and by commenting, you're signaling to your loved one, I'm opening the door to have a little conversation about this. So you're giving them a cue. And then for partners and spouses, you may worry that you'll undercut your loved ones, your partner, your spouse's will to live if you talk about what they want, what their wishes are. Speaking about death may feel like a form of abandonment to you. So it's understanding that you just want to understand that for as long as you are living, and each day, how do you want to live? And again, we're going to talk about those key components.
And it's allowing it's allowing somebody to have the ability to have a little bit of control, because they've lost, all of us have lost so much control with this disease. And if you can make some of these decisions on your own, or have these conversations and say, this is what I want, these are my wishes, or this is definitely what I don't want this, I don't like this. I think it gives you control, and it is a scary topic, and nobody wants to talk about this stuff. But I do think there's a sense of relief, and it's a real gift to be able to have these conversations with your family, your partner, your spouse, because nobody wants to guess at this kind of stuff. So have the discussions, and maybe you have to do it in measured increments. Maybe it's just for 5 minutes, or, okay, we're going to have lunch in a little bit, but can we talk about this for 10 minutes so that it doesn't feel like it's an open-ended thing that is going to drag on for the whole day. Nobody can really tolerate that. But if it's, like you said, a song, you both hear a song, or you come across a sermon, or you come across a book, there's something in there, and the person with ALS makes a comment, and you can say, I like that too, or is that something that you want to talk more about? Is that something that you might want in a memorial service? And maybe not always just framing it on the person with ALS, maybe opening it up as a conversation, and the caregiver says, I like that too. That's what I would want at my service. So it's not just the spotlight on the person that has the illness. Maybe it's a little bit easier to discuss this with multiple people at the same time, and everybody is giving their wishes.
Diana, that's a really good point. These are conversations that we all need to be having. Of course, for our ALS community, there is a diagnosis involved, and yet these are conversations, as Diana mentioned, that we all need to have. I had one Memorial Day weekend with my mom, again, kind of following by this, but I certainly didn't go over there to do that. We were sitting by the pool, and she was talking about a friend's service that she went to. And she said, you know what, this is what I want. This is this, this is this. We shed a couple of tears. We laughed. And she told me, and we didn't spend a whole lot. We spent 30 minutes maybe talking. But she said, oh my gosh, she goes, I feel such peace that you really know what I want. And we left it, and then we went and swam. But just having that conversation. And we have been talking quite a bit already about, end of life wishes, but there's things that are decisions that need to happen along the ALS journey before that happens. And it really kind of falls into these three categories. How do you want to live? We want to talk about that. How do you want to live each day? What don't you want? And how do you want to die? And when we're discussing those three things, we kind of look at where we are on the stress scale. That's so important. You can't get emotionally flooded. You can't push a conversation when it's not time. And how do you communicate your limit? Like, today I'm good. We'll revisit this, but today I'm good. Best case and worst case, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. We're going to touch on advanced directives and financial and legal, and those are some things that we're going to talk about today. So when we talk about stress, where are you on the stress scale? It's so important to be mindful of this, and especially when this is every day, right? But when you're having conversations, even having an agreed upon word or an action to cue that I'm good right now, without it getting into an argument. And then with an agreement that we'll come back to this later, because it's not resolved, but we'll come back to it later. Diana, do you want to add anything here?
Yeah, I was going to say, if you start getting into it and it gets pretty heavy pretty quickly, everybody can say, I need a timeout. And maybe you just table it for that day. And I think you're right, but with the intention that everybody knows we're going to come back and we're going to talk about this later. May not be today, may not be tomorrow, but this isn't done. We need to continue having this conversation, but somebody's maxed out, so stop.
Yeah. We mentioned that there's several decisions throughout the journey, and right here we've got some of the common decisions, certainly not all. And so when you think about the many decisions, again, that are happening each day and or preparing for what might happen in another day, the truth is we don't know, any of us. And on the ALS journey, you don't know. Tomorrow could bring a new change, a new symptom, a new change of heart or mind. That's why these conversations are important to have. There's medical decisions such as mobility. What do you want? So we're talking about some of the what might seem more basic, but those are big decisions still. What's important to me on my mobility?
And don't put them off. We've talked about that in support groups as well. Get your equipment early. You never know what's going to happen. A fall could occur, and you could have been walking on Monday, and by Friday you need that wheelchair. So when you're going to your clinics and they're talking about, let's get you fitted for your wheelchair, that's a really hard thing to come to terms with, but it needs to get done. It's going to take some time for you to get your chair, but you want to have your equipment ahead of time. You don't want to wait till the last minute or when you think you're going to need it in the next month or so, because you very often are going to need it much sooner than you anticipate. And I'm not trying to be a downer, but it's just much easier to have all of this available. And maybe you don't need it. Maybe you don't need it for a couple of years. That would be great. But it's really comforting to know that if all of a sudden you're having leg weakness or you're having arm weakness, you've got some of the equipment to help you, and you're not waiting 3 or 4 months. And with supply chain issues and that kind of thing, don't wait on these things. Please go ahead and take the advice of the OTs and the PTs in your clinics. Get going on these things.
Exactly. And hopefully all of you watching and that will be watching are connected to one of the multidisciplinary clinics throughout the state, because you have the A team there to discuss all of these things, to help be proactive. You've got a social worker almost always at those clinics as well. And so discussing nutrition options with the dietitian, with the SLP, sooner than later, because a feeding tube, you have to consider respiratory. So a lot of these, they're not singular decisions, they're really kind of connected together. So you need to have those conversations. Non-invasive ventilation, invasive ventilation, communication devices. Do you want low tech, low cost? Do you want higher tech? higher cost, and what are the options in helping to get those? Are there state grants, which there are, that can help support some of those communication devices and getting those early so you can practice before you need it. You're not wearing yourself out trying to learn, getting stressed and trying to learn.
And if you're doing voice banking, if that's
Yes.
a choice that you want to make, that takes a long time. And fatigue can really come to you either quickly or creep in. There's a big learning curve with all of the with the more advanced communication devices. So again, you want to get that early. If you're going to do voice banking, you want to do that while your voice is strong. You don't always know how quickly your voice could change. So use time wisely.
Mm-hmm. And the same can be said for clinical trials and research. Some want to participate and others do not, but explore your options, what clinical trials might be an option for you, and see what the enrollment process and timeline is, and approaches to care. Understanding that there is more than one approach to living with ALS. When we talk about that, there's things to consider and be informed on, like palliative care and hospice care. And again, some of the resources that we'll share with you at the end give you some links to explore those in further depth to understand them. And other decisions than the medical decisions are moving and living arrangements. Sometimes you need to move. Maybe you're in a two-story house, or living with someone, or you were living with someone and then you're not going to be. So those things are coming up. And caregiver arrangements, and that's a really big one.
And if your home needs to be adapted, that's going to take some time as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and caregiver arrangements is really an important one. Wouldn't you agree, Diana?
Yeah, that's, I think, right after deciding if you want to be somebody that wants to continue living on a tracheostomy, or if you want a feeding tube. I think those two, and then the caregiver, I think those are the top three decisions that need to be made, because they impact what's going to happen starting with that very first clinic visit. I would think most providers, most of the neurologists are going to start talking to you pretty quickly about, do you have your legal affairs in order? Do you have, what are your feelings about resuscitation? Have you thought about a DNR? And those are really hard things to be talking about on your first visit or your second visit. But I think it's an icebreaker, so that you need to be having those conversations from the very start. Many people don't know what they want from the very beginning. Some others do. Some say, I don't want to have anything to do with prolonging any of this. I don't want any supportive care, or I want supportive care, but I don't want any invasive care. And then there are some people that change their mind along the way. And then there are some that say, I'm going to fight this to the very end, and I'll take whatever science has for me. So I think it's really important that you know where you stand with the PEG tube, where you stand with the ventilation issues. And caregivers, you're not going to be doing any of this by yourself. What is your caregiver situation going to look like? When I said this is a family disease, this is a family process, that's, again, when the caregivers need to be considered in all of these decisions, because nothing's done in isolation. So it's really hard to get your caregiver team together. Having, are you looking at family? Are you looking at friends? Are you looking at professional caregivers? Sadly, the pandemic has made professional caregivers harder to come by. And before you get really committed to, let's say you decide you want to go on a trach, know what your caregiver situation is going to look like, because that is a huge financial commitment. It's a huge time commitment. Explore all of these things before you make your final decision.
Yeah, and again, considering every family member and caregivers, I know a lot of times families have shared that they, don't, the individual living with ALS does not want an outsider coming in to help care for them. And yet there may become a time where your spouse, your partner, your family member is not able to do it alone, physically, mentally, emotionally, and all of the above. So what can you agree upon and having those conversations too? And again, these are family conversations and that all of us need to have, and it can help prevent some big family disputes and estranged relationships. I have sat in this room here with my husband and my daughter from a previous marriage who loves him dearly. And we sat here and she said, I want you to know I want this for my mom should something happen. And he said, well, you need to know that's not her wishes and that's what we'll honor. We had that conversation in here, but that could lead to a big argument, you know, at a hospital or in an emergency situation when you're panicked and just not sure what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes those emergency situations happen even much quicker than we think they will. Diana, I will let you discuss this slide. It's a really important one, and I think you have some super insight.
So in Texas, this form on the left side of your screen is called the MOST, and it's medical orders for scope of treatment. If you've come from another state, you may know of it as the POLST, which is physician's orders for life-sustaining treatment. It does not take the place of a DNR, and we can talk about that in a minute as well. But this is to complement the DNR. If you sign that, the do not resuscitate form, when you're not in a hospital situation, you're signing an out of hospital DNR, and then we'll talk about advanced directives. The one that the hospital is like the first priority is going to be the DNR, and that is simply, do you want to be resuscitated should your heart stop and you become unconscious or not? And that's basically what the DNR is. That's for when you are an inpatient. If you are an outpatient, either you are in your home, you're in an ambulance, you are at somebody's house, you need to have an out of hospital DNR signed if you do not want to be resuscitated. That's just a standard requirement. If you have not signed that and you find yourself in a position where your heart has stopped and you are unconscious and 911 is called, EMS is required by law to do everything aggressively and assertively to aid you. They will start CPR, they'll do the chest compressions, and they will ventilate you, and they will give you medication, and they will do all the things they can to revive you. If you do not want that, if you want to allow for a natural death or to let nature take its course, then you need to have an out of hospital DNR signed. You need to have a copy of that. I would carry one either in your wallet or your purse, have one in the glove box of your car, have one taped or fastened to your refrigerator, but you need to have that if you do not want to be resuscitated. Now, if you call 911 and EMS arrives and that's not presented to the team, then they will go ahead and do all of their CPR measures. If you don't want that, you need to present that form to them right up front. In conjunction with that is something that's called either a POLST or a MOST. It has it indicates whether or not you want CPR started, but that's not the only thing that it has. It also talks about what are your feelings about, do you want a little bit of medical intervention in the way of medication to keep you comfortable? Do you want to be selective in the things that you want? Maybe you just want IV support. Maybe you want everything except intubation and chest compression. Maybe you want all of it done. This particular form is very specific in the things that are that you talk with about with your doctor and maybe with your family, and let them know, I want everything done, or I don't want any of this. I just want to make sure that I'm really comfortable. I want to be left at home. Maybe somebody has panicked. I don't want to be moved to the hospital. I want to remain in my home, but can you give me some medication to help with shortness of breath or some pain? Perhaps the caregiver or the spouse panicked. This has happened where a DNR has been signed and the partner has gotten, well, understandably really upset and has called 911, and now they don't know what to do. They feel like, I know my partner did not want to be intubated. I know my partner wanted this DNR to be followed. And now I've started something that I can't pull back. When you bring out the signed out of hospital DNR and you bring out this MOST and you have your advanced directives properly executed and signed, those measures can be removed. There won't be any questions, but you need to have these medical forms and these legal forms properly signed and available. Don't put them in a safe deposit box. You need to have them in your home. Make sure that they're in your medical record. Make sure that your partner has one, that it's sitting next to your bed or it's on the refrigerator. The most important thing is that out of hospital DNR. Then next is going to be your advanced directives. And then this MOST form really gives much more detail in what you want and what you don't want. Also talks about how you might want to be supported nutritionally. It's very good. It's not, like I said, it's not the primary form, but if you can print it out, and I know that Tanya is going to supply that information, but at least take it to your clinic appointments and discuss it with your provider. Sometimes providers are a little, I don't find that to be as much the case with the ALS providers, but oncologists are not really, I'd say they're not really good at bringing up this information early. And with ALS, I think we are entitled to get this information early because unfortunately, we know that this is going to shorten our life if we've been diagnosed with ALS, and give you the opportunity to think about these things. Let's not be doing everything in chaos. So take this form with you and discuss these things with your provider. They can be discussed with a social worker, with a chaplain, but your physician will need to sign it.
Yes, and I will send this form and an FAQ document about it as well. And as Diana said, discuss it with the team at your clinic appointment. We will also have, and as we move to the next slide on here, Diana mentioned advanced directives. We are going to have another presentation next month with some attorneys that really want to support our community and advanced directives, some simple wills, things of that nature. So no, again, there's going to be more resources and support for you as well. Today is to kind of put some of these things out there that maybe you haven't heard or didn't know as much about, so that you can have those conversations about a living will, the healthcare power of attorney or healthcare proxy, and DNR. We've talked about a couple of those today. Next month, we'll talk about those a little bit more in that estate planning presentation from some wonderful attorneys in the San Antonio area. Diana, is there anything you wanted to add on this particular slide?
No, I'm good,
okay.
Thanks.
Okay. When I send this recording to you, it will have this, I think, is an amazing video. Today, I won't show it because it's really important. I don't want to shorten it. in any way. I want you to watch it at home in the privacy of your home, but I think it really, really helps further define why advanced directives are important and how important your voice and your wishes are. So you'll get this and you'll be able to play this at home.
It's very good. It's really worth your time. And it really separates the legal from the medical, and you need to cover both bases.
Yeah, that's so true. And yeah, I could keep talking about it, then we might as well just show it, right? But it's really good because it covers all of those bases. Financial and legal. Again, next month, we'll dig into this a little bit deeper in the estate planning presentation that we have. But a couple of the things here, at least the first one, I have heard Diana say multiple times in our women's caregiver group, and that's about the certified copy of the marriage license. And most of us wouldn't think that.
Yeah, and it's not the simple one that you get maybe from your church when you get married. You have to have the legal one, the one from the county that's embossed. That will be necessary. The banks, all of the financial institutions are going to want that. When you need to contact credit bureaus, they're going to want that as well. So it can take about 4 to 6 weeks to get it. So if you don't have the original, or you may not have the original, but you can get a certified original copy from the county clerk's office, and you need to have that. Just have that present in your home now. The other thing about sharing passwords to bank accounts and financial accounts, this is a real current issue. Somebody in one of our support groups found out that when her spouse had died and their home was in title with both of their names, she was trying to go through probate to get the title changed, and found out that there was a holdup because going through probate showed that there was a bill that was not paid. Well, it was a bill that she never received because the bill was sent to her dead spouse's cell phone number, and that was the only communication that was done. And so that held up probate for them. She said, I never got a bill. When she contacted the hospital, because it was a hospital bill, they said, well, we sent it to this number. She said, you sent this to my dead spouse. So make sure that you have passwords for your pal's phone and their computer, and don't shut those things down for about 4 to 6 months. Things will all of a sudden come up in their email. They may get a text message that you did not anticipate. Don't shut anything down quickly. Another consideration from a financial standpoint are credit cards. Make sure that everybody has a credit card where they are the primary card holder, not just the authorized user. The authorized user actually has to shut that credit account down once the primary person has passed. So everybody should have a card where they are the primary card holder.
Absolutely. That's so true, Diana. We mentioned, and I know even to this point, we've discussed a lot of things, a lot of heavy things. Again, the hope is that you can just rewatch this, absorb as much as you can. Again, monitoring your stress levels, how much do I want to know, and taking that in as you are able to and as you've agreed upon with your spouse or loved one. There's additional resources that we've included on here. I want to also add, and you'll get this again in the follow-up email, that the Navigating ALS series that we have here at ALS Texas, there's one part of that series that talks about estate planning as well. So know there's a number of resources. This is certainly not an exclusive list. This is just some that we want to point you to today. The ALS video series on respiratory decisions is really, really good. That's a 3-part series. The 5 wishes, we mentioned that on or we showed that on a slide, but it's got some information that's written in everyday language about helping to express your wishes in very specific matters. The Conversation Project is another very good link. And I mentioned early in this presentation, Rebecca Axline, the social worker at Houston Methodist, and Dr. Foster. One of this particular resource is the value of incorporating palliative or hospice services. And it's really good. Rebecca Axline also had one. Always go back to our ALS Texas website. You can not only see, now it's new and improved, a calendar of all of our upcoming events. And it's really easy to read to see that calendar, but there's past events that you can go back and see recordings of. And so that's very helpful for things that you may not have known we did or you missed. And so go back and check those as well. Keep the conversations going. Again, it's meant to be ongoing. We have, of course, presentations and workshops such as this and the Navigating ALS, and the one we're doing next month that really digs into more of the legal aspects of estate planning. But there's connection groups, there's caregiver groups where anything can be talked about. And it's an open forum for what you need. And so I've listed some of those that are coming up. Our San Antonio Connection Group, the ALS and FTD, the Men's Caregiver Group, Brood Awakenings, the Women's Caregiver Group meets every 2 weeks, and the Houston Connection Group. Those are just a few of the things that we have coming up. And I'm really excited to share on this slide. If you've got your phones handy, you should be able to scan this QR code. If not, when we send you the follow-up link, you'll be able to do that. We have a brand new platform, a forum, the ALS Texas Connection, and it is great. So many people have already joined. If you haven't, I encourage you to do so. You can join specific groups, you can start conversations, you can ask questions, you can get feedback, ask for feedback from others that are sharing a similar journey as you. And so it's really, really good. This is a great place to ask some of those questions too. It's a safe place. It's just for our ALS Texas community. So this is not going to be the public from all over the world. It's a private place. So we're really excited to offer this and to give our friends, to give each of you a place to communicate. So this is one more resource. And that is the end actually of our presentation, the slide deck, if you will. I wanted to give us just a few minutes if there's any questions that you have. And again, we know these are private conversations and want you to have those with your loved ones. But if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask those in the chat or unmute your microphone. And again, we'll follow up. It will probably be tomorrow with the recording of this presentation, so you can go back and watch it as well.
Hey, this is Mark. I do have a question about the forms. Is it important to have an original with the signature with you? And then, like, if the doctor wants a copy, does it matter if it's a copy or does it need to be originals with signatures?
Does not matter.
Okay, great. So the doctor have a copy. You can have a copy in your car, in your house.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Yep.
All right. And then when you use the forms, say you go to the hospital or the EMS, do they take it? Do they see it? Do they need to take it with them?
They don't typically, well, they don't typically take it from you.
Okay.
Now, when you go to the hospital, hopefully, they can make a copy. They don't usually take it from you.
Okay.
To be honest, I made like 5 copies and just had them all over, made sure I had one in my purse. I had one on the refrigerator. I had one in the car. If they take it, fine, that's fine. But they don't usually take it. They do want to look at it. They will really look at the signatures to make sure that it was properly signed. And should, this does happen at times, should CPR get started and you couldn't find the form, when you bring the form out, that's when, as the person that's signed on the designated on the directive, as the person that is indicated on the advanced directive, you can say, I've got this paperwork and I want everything to stop. You have that ability. That is within your power.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Great questions, Mark. I'm so glad that you all took time out, and I know we had several registered that are going to go back and watch this. Again, they're very intimate conversations, but important. Know that, again, this is a starting point. We have more resources. You can reach out to our ALS Texas team at any time. Reach out to me, to Care Services. You've got a Care Services team that's phenomenal. your multidisciplinary clinic team. And again, next month, look for information on our estate planning workshop with some attorneys and really digging into the legal aspects, okay? Thank you all so much again. You should get that follow-up email tomorrow afternoon at the latest, all right? It'll be from me.
Great. Thank you, Tanya.
All right, thank you all.
All right, thanks everybody. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.